Greetings, everybody. This is the Starving Martian, and usually here in my little attic studio, I try very, very hard not to be overly negative or terribly critical, but every once in a while, life just hands you Mars Attacks High School issue number 2. So here we go. And bear this in mind, I cannot stress this enough. This is the final issue of Topps Comics Mars Attacks run of comic books, and they knew going into this that this would be their final issue. Reading the letters page at the end of this, this is the last one. They admit it. It says, sorry, this is our last issue, and yet so much is left unsaid, so much is left undone, and I don't know, considering the way this one turned out, maybe it's a good thing, but first of all, let's talk about the cover for a moment here. If this looks familiar to you, well, that's because it is essentially the same cover that they gave us for issue number 1. Does anybody see a Martian anywhere in either of these? I don't know, maybe it's behind the three-breasted cannibal lady. I can't tell, but I don't see one. The lighting's a little more interesting here, I guess. She's purple. And they put Mars Attacks on the bottom instead of on the top. But other than that, this is essentially the exact same cover, except now she's saying something less clever, and we're not even going to bother reading it. So, alright, so we begin our story in New Jersey. Because where else would you begin the final story in the Mars Attacks saga? As a couple aboard Martian troopers here seem to have found the Sarlacc pit, and they're entertaining themselves by trapping dogs down there and growing giant ants to fight with the dogs. And they get the message that they have an assignment and they're ready to move out, and so they do. Back to Ron Jacobs. If you remember Ronnie, he's the teenage boy whose mother was turned into an 18-year-old supermodel by the Martians on her request, and he's kind of freaked out by that. We get a glimpse of his bedroom, and we see that he's got a rather nice flying saucer model, which in the world of Mars Attacks seems like an odd thing. It would be like if you lived during World War II and you had a model of, a U-2 German sub or something like that. Just, I don't get it, but whatever. So he's going to be late for school. And that's not a good thing because, Martians can mutate you or something out of retaliation for whatever they feel like. He takes a moment to cover up his mother and does beg the question, are there going to be any repercussions for his mom? For what does she have to do? What's her side of this Faustian deal? When the Martians come to collect. We don't know. We will never know. They will never tell us. So we get a picture of his family, him a little bit younger, his mother and father, who is not an ape man apparently. I don't know. We covered that last issue as much as we could. He grabs his skateboard and hits Mach 2! Or that's what he says he's going to do. Whether or not he breaks any sound barriers, we don't know. So we get to the high school, and the Martians are assembling there. Now in our last issue, Cannibal Ann raided a facility and destroyed a lot of experiments, including a whole bunch of naked vacuum-sealed women who were being used to grow alien babies. And so now the Martians have decided that they need to refill their stock by taking all the Earth females from this one particular high school. Why this high school? I don't know. So, hey, we get somebody here reading a Topps comic. Which one? I don't know. I'm assuming it's the adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, the Martians raid the school, pull on any and all ladies girls, women folk out. Turns out that the four women that we've encountered previously have an exemption. Their parents have some kind of diplomatic immunity. They have red card status, which means they have a Martian tattoo that should exempt them from this sort of thing. But they're unwilling to show it off because it's kind of sort of in an embarrassing spot on their anatomy. And the Martians decide that their need for more female test subjects is more important than their status anyway. This one guy tries to save his sister and is blown to Kingdom Come for his efforts. So we have all the women in the school being loaded onto, I don't know. I only see one transport vehicle. And later we'll see there's like 4 women in here. Four teenage girls. Where do the rest of them go? I don't know. They don't tell me. So let's catch up with Cannibal Ann for a moment. And if you remember, she's made some kind of deal with Komodoth, the leader of the Martians. She shows him an example of her sensuality, promising him more later. But he's got the willpower to resist, as good leaders do. And he seems to want something from her. It's not clear what. He asks her to join him on some sort of venture. Will she assist him? But before she answers, he demonstrates the Martian's power by going to Mount Rushmore, which is on the Earth side of the Mars-Earth line, and blowing it all to heck and back. This, of course, gets the Earth military people all riled up. They decide that they have to counterattack, but they're not sure where or how much force to use. They know they're kind of being led into a trap, but they're afraid of looking weak if they don't do something. So what do they decide to do? How do they strike back at the Martians? I don't know. They do not tell me. So Anne watches this. We are asked, well, Cannibal Ann, what is your decision? So, what is Cannibal Ann's decision? You ready for this? I don't know. This is the last we see of Cannibal Ann. Exit stage left even. Back to the rest of the action, which you may have noticed has already moved out of our high school, even though the book is called Mars Attacks High School. Why bother calling it Mars Attacks High School when you're not going to... Anywho. So, as Van seems to stop to pick up one straggler. Hey, look, there's another random female. Let's toss her in there. But this is Ron's sister, and he takes this rather personally. And starts chasing him down on his skateboard, because it's the 90s, you know, and all the cool kids have a skateboard. Friends tell him not to try, not to bother. The aliens have lasers and guns and things that go boom and zap, and he's going to get himself killed. But this is his sister, and he's got to do what he can. So he takes off on his skateboard, and on his skateboard manages to catch up to the alien transport vehicle, which is pretty impressive. And using a Swiss Army knife, attempts to pick the lock on the back of the vehicle. Unfortunately, either his lock-picking skills aren't up to par, or Martian land transports are just more difficult to pry open than the standard Swiss Army fork allows, and the Martians see him and decide to give him a bit of a shock. Now, I would have imagined that the Martians would have a more, deadly deterrent, as electricity would crisp him to the bone, but instead it just knocks him down, breaks his glasses, and they continue merrily on their way. So he gets a little sad. It can't end like this. It can't. Boo-hoo. But he gets inspiration remembering the Martin Casey, our hero from Mars Attacks Baseball Special, a much better book than this. And decides to give it one more go, and he grabs his skateboard, even though the Martian should have a good head lead on him. Grabs his skateboard and he goes, and town folk are all like, "Well, look at that!" But the Martians retaliate again with non-lethal weaponry. This should atomize him. What are they playing with? Why are they not turning him into bones? So, still on his skateboard, now with a nasty bloody shoulder wound, he's able to pull these hot tricks and jump over lasers and bullets and everything. How? I don't know. Because I'm Bart Simpson, who the hell are you? It's the 90s, this is what kids on the skateboard do. And so he manages to wipe out, but the skateboard flies through the window of the Martian transport and blows it all to Kingdom Come. You would think these things would be better shielded than this. But a single skateboard is able to go through the window and I guess take out the driver, and this one guy staggers out. He looks much worse for wear than Ronnie does, who just wiped out after getting a shoulder wound. But fortunately, the collapsing transport freed the girls. One of them bops him over the head with a 4x4, 2x4, whatever by 4. And he's out for the count. Ronnie gets kisses, which I guess cure his shoulder? Oh, and the Martian gas makes the ants giants, which nobody seems particularly threatened by. So what happens with the giant ants? I don't know. What happens to the rest of the girls taken from the high school? I don't know. What happens to anything? What about Colleen McKay, who was last seen in our last issue being experimented on? Well, we'll kind of sort of see her in Mars Attacks the Savage Dragon, which kind of sort of takes place in an alternate dimension timeline thing. This book. This book. Now, one cool thing you do get is a little peek at the Topps Comics movie adaptation. They were going to make an adaptation of the Mars Attacks movie. They got some of the panels drawn out, but it never came to pass, which is kind of unfortunate. I would very much have liked to see a full color adaptation of the Mars Attacks film by some of the talented artists in the Topps Comics, but that sadly never came to pass. And what we are left with is a very unsatisfying ending to the Topps Comics Mars Attacks saga. Now, if you absolutely positively have to get your hands on these, they're relatively inexpensive online, or you could pick up Mars Attacks Classics Volume Number 3. That contains these as well as some much better comics. And I do actually recommend Mars Attacks Classics Volume Number 3. It's got a baseball special, the Wizard 1/2, and it also has Mars Attacks the Savage Dragon, which I will hopefully get to at some point because that's a really fun run. But in between then and now, we have Mars Attacks Image, which, if anything, is worse than this. So look forward to that. In the meantime, this has been the Starving Martian, reminding you all once and again to keep watching the skies.